Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the startup coach, founder of TorontoStarts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is Bernie Lee, general partner of Antler Canada. Welcome, Bernie.
Great. Well, thank you for having me here, Craig.
It's always great to have different Canadian institutions and obviously investors here to talk to, the investment process and how they help the community. Can you tell us about your background and how you got involved in startups?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be delighted to. I might have a story that might be a little similar to many people here that are in Canada or from Canada. So, I mean, I was born in Canada, the son of immigrant parents, and maybe it's a little stereotypical, but they kind of went through the Asian, hey, go out and get a steady job, kind of like tried to set the tone for their children in that light. And so when I graduated from university, kind of specialized in finance, went and worked on Bay Street for a year in private equity, got the opportunity to move down into New York with work in a management consulting role. And it was at that time where, for me, the whole spark when it came to getting absorbed into the world of possibility was coming into New York City back in 1999. And for those that are old enough to may remember, it's kind of the emergence of Internet 1.0 that was happening. So there was just an incredible rush of energy, a lot of, like I said before, this whole, just like, how is the world going to be transforming here? The democratization of information that was spreading, where people could self-publish at the click of a button. It also happened that two of my roommates and best friends were also very much working in the startup world at the same time. And so, over the dinner table, that's what we began to chat about 24/7. As I thought about my next step, that actually is what led me into the world of venture capital. And so I ended up joining a venture firm called Carrot Capital back in 2001. An interesting time to be in the venture industry because it's just after the popping of the first internet bubble. But spent a few years down there looking at early stage investment opportunities, primarily in the area of technology. Subsequently moved back and returned to Canada, this time moving to Montreal and joining a group now known as Inovia Capital, and spent a number of years there, also continuing, making investments and working on investment opportunities in the area of technology, with that group there. And so all in all, spent almost a decade on the investment side of early stage venture. It was at that point in time, and there was actually one particular conversation I actually remember when I was sitting down with an entrepreneur. We were having a little bit of a heart to heart. They were telling me about some of their problems, and they were kind of asking me, saying, well, here's the situation I'm in. What do you think I should do? And it dawned on me at that moment that I didn't feel that I had the right or, was justified to tell them what I think they should do. I thought that I could tell them the way that I saw things from an investor perspective, but I had never been an operator at that point in time. And that's where I kind of got that next calling and saying, hey, I think I need to actually go out and operate a company and try starting something up. And that's when I kind of moved to the second chapter, which was co-founding a company. I returned to Toronto. Myself and a few other co-founders came together and co-founded a company called Pure Energies, and that was in the residential solar sector. So we started off this being catalyzed by the Green Energy Act that had been implemented in the province of Ontario to help the province move off of coal and into the world of renewables. And so that's where we began our journey in building a company. I won't go into too much detail there because that itself is a pretty long story, but over the course of that business, we became one of the leading installers of solar for home owners in the province of Ontario. We expanded into the US, where we helped thousands of homeowners find solar solutions across 13 states. And ultimately, we were fortunate enough to grow that business, raised venture financing to help fuel some of that growth. And ultimately, that culminated into the exit, the sale of a company to a public company called NRG in a strategic acquisition. And so that in itself is a little bit of an encapsulation of my experience in the startup world.
How did your experience as a founder and investor shape your approach to supporting entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that probably a different person now, having gone through the founder journey than I may have been prior to doing so when looking at early stage opportunities. So one, there's a lot more founder empathy. I think that prior to having actually gone through the fire, the gauntlet of starting a company, when I looked at opportunities, it was very much more theoretical, analytical. You're looking at it more as an investment case, and okay, does this thing kind of generate the returns I might be looking for? Is this a hot sector? What are the risks? So on and so forth. Now kind of doing this again after the fact, having done both the investment side and built a company as well. Yes, some of those initial questions are things that we still take into consideration, but I will also look at things through more of the operator lens. So one, where's the founder's mindset? What are the motivations? Are they actually going to be the ones that persist and endure to actually, build the company when it goes through its inevitable tough times? There's also just the aspect of thinking about where a new team may be in the stage of their company build and their company lift, and thinking about, okay, well, if I were in their shoes, what might be next? What would that next stage look like? And it was probably something that, prior to me having gone through that experience myself, I did not appreciate as much, or frankly, even thought of as much, because it was a little more theoretical. Now you can sit there and kind of like have that, okay, yeah, I can see where you are right now. Yeah, here's some of the challenges I think you're going to have coming down next. Here's how I might have thought about doing it. But wow, the way you're thinking about it is really a lot smarter, makes a lot more sense. And, I think that just provides a more informed decision.
How does Antler Canada differ from other startup accelerators and incubators?
Sure. So maybe I'll take a step back and explain a little bit about who Antler is and what we do. And then we could talk about how we think we're different. So Antler is a global platform that has a mission to help day zero founders build and stand up exceptional companies. And so this work is being done in over 20 countries around the world. We actually think of it as almost a wave of entrepreneurship and innovation that is being created around the world. And so one of the locations happens to be here in Canada, where myself and my partner, named Amadeo, began launching the platform here in Canada in January of 2022. So, to bring it back, who do we service? Well, we are focused on finding people that we think are exceptionally talented, exceptionally driven and motivated, that know that founding a company is the next thing that they want to do in life. And not just founding a company, but founding something with a high level of ambition, kind of venture scale, that traditional proverbial venture scale sort of thing. And the Antler model is here to act as a support for founders that are at that stage. So number one, I think it's quite unique that there are very few available opportunities where someone who's just starting off a company, which is a really scary step, take that first step forward and make that brave decision. We're here to help people at that particular stage. We also have the philosophy of saying like, hey, good on you if you're going to build, but why build in the basement on your own? Why not build in the company of others? And so in our programs, in the case of Canada, we'll have 50 some odd other founders at that same particular stage, at that same area of life where they're saying, we want to found a company, and you can build in a group, build amongst peers, and in fact, use the opportunity to find a co-founder, find a couple of co-founders. That co-founder pairing and that providing an environment where one could actually find their kind of partners in crime or potential partners in crime, we think is something that's very unique with Antler. And that's part, our philosophy, and what we spend time with our founders on is just that, encouraging them to get to know the other people in the room. They might become your co-founders. If anything, you're going to boost a personal network like that. We spend a lot of time kind of finding these people to spend this time with us in our program. And then the other aspect is when we work with these companies, we have our team here that works with these founders over a 10-week period as they begin to either pair up, triple up, or whatnot. We help them try to figure out the problem areas they want to tackle, the ideation of businesses and business models. How can they go about that and validate, their ideas, their assumptions, kind of logical manner. But we also like to leverage the visibility and insight that we provide, given that we're a global platform. And so we have, and what we're doing in Canada is you can probably think about it, is it's being replicated and done in 20 other countries. And that brings a lot of relationships, that brings a lot of experience, a lot of advisors, that brings a network of over 700 portfolio companies that Antler firms around the world have invested in. And what that does is potentially helps foster more connections, getting to more answers quickly because of these relationships that we have in place. As mentioned, just to reiterate, these relationships are not just with Antler as operators, as general partners or platform teams in all of these other countries. We also have an incredible team in the area of capital that's really understanding kind of like the funding environment, literally all over the world. We have a marketing and PR team that helps with messaging and thinking about how to amplify the work that founders are doing. And then, of course, over 700 portfolio companies where you have these same kind of energetic, founders, these smart, ambitious people around the world that might be able to become peers to the founders that are working in Canada, in the Canadian marketplace. And so we just think that it's a rich environment that we provide for founders to make and establish a lot of meaningful connections in a very kind of short-circuited manner.
We've got some questions coming in, and I'm going to eventually ask them because I grouped them together. But the focus is, are there top industries that Antler takes into their incubator accelerator program?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So first, every region tends to have their own approach to what they look at. So, we do have some regions where, say, Web3 is an area that they have a specialized focus on, not exclusively, but just, very particular strengths in that area. Up in the Nordic region of Antlers, the area of sustainability, of kind of smart cities are areas that they have particular interest in. Here in Canada, we're a little bit more generalist. So I like to describe it by saying we're largely a function of the founders that end up coming in, and every cohort is different. Some people come in with experience in fintech, with experience and expertise in prop tech, or whatever the case may be. The areas that we probably are not well suited to be addressing are things in the area of pharmaceuticals, of playing with molecules, for two reasons. One is we don't believe that we're well equipped here and skilled enough to be able to be dabbling in those particular categories. I think that's a very specialized type of investment class. And two, given the capital that we provide to founders, those that end up receiving an investment from Antler Canada to get their companies going, we don't know if it may be able to make a meaningful kind of dent into what a founder of that particular type of business, may need to get to that next stage. So by and large, pharma are areas that we don't touch. But, so conversely, we do see ourselves as a little bit of generalists. Given my background, I certainly have, experience and fondness for things in the area of climate tech. And technology, more broadly speaking. My partner, Naaman Badeo, who is a 4-time entrepreneur, very deep and very successful in the area of travel. And so has run and built and sold a number of companies in those areas. And so, is like incredibly well suited to be able to look at that particular category. But by and large, the companies that we've invested in thus far really have ranged the gambit, which includes prop tech, which includes fintech, edutech. We actually have one company that's even working the area of lab-grown fats or cultivated fats, kind of this whole alternative protein category, which I think is very, very interesting and exciting, and can be very impactful, to the world in the future.
Can you tell us about the Antler Canada residency program and who should apply?
Sure. So I love speaking about this particular subject. So the first is the who, and then we'll get to a little bit about the program itself. I'm just going to write that down so I don't forget. So the who, we don't put necessarily hard parameters. We think that there are talented people that can reside everywhere in the world, which is why Antler is almost everywhere in the world. And they don't necessarily need to have that kind of prototypical look and feel of, let's call it, the startup founders from the past 10, 15 years ago, that necessarily had to go to the top university, that had to have worked at one of the big tech firms, that sort of thing. What we do look for are people that we believe are incredibly bright and smart, number one, that are persistent and have demonstrated a level of determination of tackling big problems in the past. And they don't necessarily need to be work-related. In fact, we had one person that had come through one of our residency programs in the past and had to deal with in his life being born into kind of like a situation of being stateless. And through, determination, hard work, and will, had gone on to succeed, moved to different countries, got top, educations in his particular case, and went on to work at some, great companies. But seeing that kind of pattern of problems that they had tackled in the past, we think speaks well to the character of someone. So the types of people that come in can be of different stripes. If we had to put archetypes to it, we do have kind of what we call the traditional three, which is number one is kind of the tech builder. So the developer, the technologist, someone who understands whether it be software or whether it be, let's call it even more like a product manager side, but has that vision for, hey, here's a product that we need to build and the technology that we need to kind of build to get there. Number two would be what we call the consummate kind of hustler, the person that is out there engaging with potential users, generally has the ability to communicate a strong narrative, tell a story, which we think is very important for someone on the team to be able to do. And that has that energy, that knows how to create opportunities in a way. The third is we often will have people that we call the domain experts. So that might have been within an industry for a number of years and have unique insights, or maybe, let's say, an academic that has kind of that bent and are one of the top, subject matter experts in a particular field. Of course, our question is, okay, well, can you move from the theoretical to the applied? Because we're really here much more about kind of the applied aspects of that. And so that's a little bit, if we were to try to put people into buckets, how we might think of them. But we do recognize that at the end of the day, every person is unique. And that's one of the great joys of being at Antler, is that every time we run a program, we have 50 to 60 new unique people that have their strengths in their own areas. And then we bring them into the experience, into our office. We are currently located downtown Toronto at the tech hub called 111. So many of you that are on the call may know this area. And we spend 10 weeks with these people. And during that 10 weeks, number one, often a lot of times magic happens where you get people that start to collide with one another, sometimes randomly, sometimes through boot camps and exercises that we put together, but often to find who their collaborators may be, to share their ideas of what they're looking to build. And often they're helping each other, in addition to, of course, the team that we have here at Antler Canada, help them along during the process. And end to end, the way we wrap it is a 10-week period in which we start working with these 50 people that often then over the course of weeks really get into the ideation, and we like to try to nudge them towards proving out the experimentation of figuring out, like, am I onto something? Could I be putting together the foundation of the next kind of game-changing startup? What we are not so much is we don't like to describe ourselves as a content-heavy kind of teaching type of program. So, if you are a founder that is looking to join an experience that says, well, I want to learn kind of the basics of marketing, I want to learn the basics of finance, I want to learn the basics of sales. There are other programs, I believe, that are out there that probably, do that and focus and specialize on that. The way we think about Antler is that we are here much more of a sandbox for people that are like, hey, we want to start really ideating and building and experimenting. And so we do tend to look for people that have a bias to action and will spend a good chunk of their time while they're working with us actually going out there and trying and learning and speaking with users. Oftentimes they will be failing, but through that, hopefully learning along the way, which we think is a huge part of the founder experience. And we then, with our team here, also spend time with the various teams, meeting up with them, several times per week, that are helping kind of hash through some of their ideas, trying to help them lean into areas where we think they may be on the right path. And if they're not on the right path from our perspective, trying to communicate that as early as possible. We were actually just having a team discussion about this, earlier about transparency and how some founders, love it. Some founders, might not like it so much, but we do think that, we've learned over time, it's probably the best way that we can serve the founders that come through our residency program is by trying to be as transparent as we can, hopefully in a constructive way. But what we've learned from founders that's one of the key things they actually appreciate the most is getting some of that candid feedback. So that's what we do, within that 10-week program. Over the course of the 10 weeks, at the end of that, we then give them the opportunity to present to our investment committee. Our investment committee will often bring in members from the Antler Global team who will look at these pitches alongside with us from the Canadian team. And we will then kind of make a determination of whether we can proceed forward with an investment or not into the companies themselves. I think it's a unique thing to bring up. I love it when we have our colleagues that are coming in from, let's say, Antler UK or Antler US, looking at the founders coming through our programs, because I think it provides a very different lens and frankly, a different benchmark in which they, kind of analyze and observe are the founders coming out of Canada through our program. Nothing kind of like makes me smile more than when one of my colleagues in the US will just be like, wow, this person would kill it in the US as well. Because, it kind of in some ways does remove the whole Canadian bias that we have. We don't want to believe that we're actually just building the best companies in Canada. We want to hope and aspire that the companies that are coming out of Antler Canada are going to rank amongst the best in the world. Because ultimately, our business model here is run as an investment fund. And so we are looking to see opportunities and back founders who are diving into fields where we can get those outsized outcome potentials that, most VC funds are going to be looking for. I think one thing to carry on, that's the program itself. And I'd be remiss to say that that's where things actually end. Once an investment is made into a company, it almost moves to this whole second stage. So we continue working with the firms. We're completely aligned with them in terms of working and hoping for, them to become big successes, because we now have real cash riding alongside, these founders. And that's where, we continue to leverage all of the resources and relationships that have been established at Antler globally to the benefit of our founders. And so we're always looking for ways to make introductions and build relationships to the most relevant people, whether it be on the business development side, whether it be to help them find specialized skill sets they may need to kind of like amplify or support their teams. Then, of course, helping them kind of navigate the murky waters of fundraising and capital to find who we think may be the most relevant types of investors for them.
We got lots of questions coming in, so we're going to start tackling them. Let's start with, are you accepting applicants now, and when does your next cohort start?
Yeah, great. So we are accepting applicants now. Our next cohort is tentatively scheduled for September 11th. So it'll be mid-September. But always great to, get your application in as early as possible. It gives us a better chance to get to know you, for you to get to know us, because we do, while we have that time and available to us, we want to make sure that it's the right fit both ways.
How mature is the startup expected to be in order to, one, get into the program?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question. We call ourselves Day Zero founders, and we mean that for a reason, is that we will have a percentage of people that come in that literally don't even know what they want to build, what they want to tackle, but they know in their heart that this is the thing that they must do next in life. That's probably on the earliest stage of things. Probably about 2/3 of people that come in have an idea, at least initially, of the area they want to explore, either the industry or the problem they want to tackle. And then a smaller percentage of those may have been at the stage where they've actually been thinking about the potential solution, have been ideating. And in some cases, some people have even, come in where they've have MVPs that have been built out and have been engaging with users that are out there, but still, whether it's coming to Antler because they're like, hey, I've started this, but I know I need a co-founder, or I can see where being plugged into the Antler system can be really beneficial on this hopefully long road ahead of building a company. We will have people that will, come in and join us in our program. So if I were to kind of try to put rough numbers around it, I would say anyone that is between month 0 to month 6 or so of their founder journey, probably would be well suited. Another way of saying it is ranging from, hey, I don't have my idea, to, I've started to maybe work on my MVP, maybe well suited for the Antler journey.
And what up if you have an MVP and maybe a couple of customers?
Yeah, I think so. I think that is, when you're on the edges there, that's where a conversation may happen. I would say that, when does a company feel like it might be too far along? If some companies have raised, an amount of money, let's call it, hundreds of thousands, $500,000 or more of funding already, then probably they're a little too far along. There's other places that may be better suited for them. If companies, are starting to generate really meaningful revenues, then, there might be this, a conversation around like whether Antler's, the right place for them to be, where compared to where their company is already at from an investment term standpoint, if that would make sense for them. So, I think that, if you're north of, hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue or whatnot, then, there's probably different audiences that you're going to be going towards.
And you mentioned you take 50 per cohort in Canada. On average, how many applications are you getting?
So, yeah, in our last recruitment run, we had about 2,400 applicants, and we had about 50, just north of 50 founders that came into our residence program. So it represents about the top 2.5% of applicants that are applying that actually, come in and join us for that 10-week program. So the bar is quite high. Truth be told, we do think that every person that we, have come into our residency program, is really special and talented in their own way. And so that also then makes for hopefully a good environment for, if you're in that room, the other people have also been deemed to be, talented, exceptional in their own way, probably different than the way that you are as a founder, but in their own way. And, that's part of what we think creates that kind of thing that's special, pardon me, about Antler.
And the cost of the program, is
Mm.
it a certain cost to it? And do you take equity as a result?
So no, we do not. There is no cost to the founders. We do not take any equity for participating in our program. The way that it works is actually we provide, as of the recording right now, a stipend to founders who spend their time with us in our 10-week program, which can amount up to $3,000. So, look, no one's going to be coming to our program to think they're going to make it rich because of a stipend. But we do think that it is important and can be helpful and meaningful, particularly for certain people where, spending 2.5 months with us, we recognize people have bills to pay, right? They are making a big commitment, and hopefully it's one that you would have taken anyways. But we think that this may just help alleviate a little bit of that financial burden and pressure that one might feel, so that they can spend more time really engrossed and focused on using this time to really figure out if they're onto something, and give them that freedom and time to explore that in a very, very meaningful way. So following that, probably the next question is going to be, okay, well then, what does it work when you invest? What do you invest in? What are the terms? And so I'll kind of get ahead of that question right now, is we have a very standardized set of terms at Antler Canada, which is, if one, after the 10 weeks, receives the approval from the investment committee, it is for a net amount of $150,000 that goes to the company, in return for 10% of the company in the form of a safe. So very kind of standard types of, made famous by, Y Combinator. So very kind of standardized, instrument, and those are the terms that we set out. People often ask us and say, well, why is it so prescribed? The reality is that the business that we're in is a little bit of a volume business. And so as people are coming in, right, these 50 some odd people that may start may kind of reduce down to about 25 or so ideas or pitches, of which a number, percentage of those, we would invest in at the investment committee day. And that's going to depend on program to program, of course, depending on the nature of the ideas and the companies that arise out of that. But it's going to be very, very hard to negotiate with every single person, every team, kind of like figuring out terms and whatnot. So we want to simplify it. We just want to say, look, let's not spend all this time and sometimes, frankly, negative energy on the negotiation part. This is what it is in the offer that it is coming to the program. Everyone knows this. It's been well explained ahead of time, and should be accepted by the founders that are entering into our program. We think of what we're doing as kind of pre-investing a lot. We are trying to find and screen for, again, an exceptionally, talented group of people that will be in the room itself. We provide, the space and the environment, the content, the programming for that 10-week period. Right, we have our team that is being spent working with the founders to help them on their ideas. So in some ways, what we think of it is just a lot of pre-investing in a way. And so, at the end, if the investment is actually made, it's like, great, let's button it up. Here's some, start a company, incorporate something if you don't have it already, open up a bank account so we can put some money in there. And now you can go with a little bit more money in the bank to actually start to work on your business and get it to the next stage.
And for those who don't get funded by Antler, can they still use the Antler mentor programs? And is there any ongoing relationship or financial commitment?
Yeah, so once a decision has been made to decline from the investment committee on an opportunity, there is no more obligation. For the founders, at that point in time, the official journey with Antler does come to an end. But I actually believe that a lot of it comes much more so from the relationships they've built during it. I mean, it's kind of like makes natural sense and probably pointing the obvious, but I think it's worth repeating that during that 10-week period, these founders are getting to know an incredible group of people. They're also getting meeting the other founders. They also get to know the Antler Antler Canada folks. May get to know some of the people from Antler Global, and those are relationships that do carry on. Like, we don't believe that it's the sort of thing, and we don't take the view on relationships that it's so transactional. It's like, okay, you're not here, thank you. Don't let's not talk to each other anymore. We like for that to persist, and it's serendipitous what actually may happen from that. So we've had founders that have gone through the program, have not received investment from the investment committee, and then fast forward a couple of months, they've actually ended up joining some of the other teams that have. We think that is one way that they, can still derive something out of spending the time here. They may join other Antler opportunities from around the world, and we kind of make them available, whether it be as a full-time, team member, or perhaps as a specialized consultant. We are able to provide some of our observations, and having worked with these people for 10 weeks, we can really speak well of, their particular areas of strengths, and maybe, a couple of, coaching tips. And so we can help foster those types of relationships themselves. We've had many people that, will check in periodically, will give us updates with what they're up to now. They'll ask us and say, here's what I'm doing now, and trying to meet so-and-so. Would you be able to perhaps see if there's someone that you might be able to intro us to? And well, we're delighted to do our best to make those introductions happen when we can.
This is a two-part question.
Hmm.
What if you're a part-time founder? Because I had a couple questions here about part-time founders
Yep.
who right now are only spending 10, 15 hours a week because they have a full-time job. Can they apply to the program? And what is the time commitment during the 10 weeks for the founder to the program?
Yeah, great questions. So the Antler experience is a full-time endeavor. So we do not work with founders that are kind of holding on to jobs and just building this, on a part-time or kind of a side hustle sort of thing. We just, our kind of bias towards this, and our assumption is that, like, if you're going to be, engaged in exploring and seeing if this is real for you, you're really going to be in. We think of it somewhat as a sign of commitment in a way. And part of it is not just for us as Antler, but is also for kind of like the respect of the other people that are also making that very strong commitment towards, they've left jobs. They've, in some ways are telling their families, okay, I'm going to go through this program. It's going to be intense. Like, I'm not going to see probably as much of you as I may normally, because I'm going to be so focused on trying to, work hard during these important initial stages where you're seeing if, like, you have the beginnings of a business or not. And so our whole bent is towards people that are doing it on a full-time basis. With respect to the time commitment, well, as mentioned, I mean, we see this as kind of being a full-time affair. So we have space during that 10 weeks where, people can come into 111 and work. It's a wonderful environment here. And again, they get to, work amongst the company of their own peers, other people that are also, trying to work probably just as hard as them. And we think that helps foster, a great energy, an important energy for founders that are at this stage. It's, I've been on the side of the other during, on the other side as a founder myself, like those first couple of weeks and months are so important. It's so easy to get discouraged because you're trying to create something from nothing. And if you're doing that by yourself and you get your first couple of no's from people, right? After you've told your mom and dad about your idea, and of course they just love it because it's their child, and you told your closest friends and they don't want to be rude to you, so they say they love it. And then you go out and you actually speak to real impartial people and they're like, no, I don't see it, that sort of thing. It's so easy to get discouraged. But when you do that in the company of, dozens of other people, one, there's a lot more empathy, but two, the lessons learned and shared experiences, we think is, really incredible, and is part of, a way to kind of turbocharge your learnings, right? Like, don't just learn from your own mistakes, learn from the mistakes and experiments of others.
I like to say entrepreneurship is not a solo sport. So find your community, have other founders, regular 9 to 5ers don't understand what a founder's going through. So, you need to have your group, support group, whatever you want to call it, that will help you get through these things. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
go ahead.
I totally, totally agree with you 100%. Because it's not just some of the tactical things like, oh, how do I approach my first customer? How do I create an email? Or how do I build a social presence? It is the scary moment is like, I feel like a fraud. Am I really supposed to be doing this? Am I really as smart as I think that I am? Can look at the other companies that have raised $5 million. How could I ever compete against them? And right, it's going to be those other people that have been through this unique process of founding a company, that are really going to kind of get you in a way and understand that. How many people in this world have actually gone through and tried to found, a VC ambitioned company? Very, very few. So it's hard to find that. I mean, if you took a room of 100 random people and asked, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are going to be, but it's going to be under 2% is, my thought, unless maybe you're at the hottest coffee shop in Silicon Valley. And so finding that type of person is exceedingly difficult. And that's, again, part of it is, you're 50, 55 some odd people that you can go through this experience with.
I think we got most of the questions except for one from the chat room about startup visa. So I'm going to wrap it up and say, how do you work or do you work with people in the startup visa program and or newcomers to Canada?
Yeah. So what we look for are people that do have PR status, permanent residency status in Canada. We haven't gone deep on the startup visa side. It's something that we have on our radar to begin exploring. And so, that might be something that may change in the future. But as of right now, we are looking for people that have that PR status. But, when it comes to, newcomers, we get a lot of those. Our percentage of founders, I think in the last batch, again, over 2/3 of the people that were in our cohort were, self identified immigrants. And in some cases, we had one founder that came in. He had literally moved to Canada, I think like a week or 2 weeks, before he had started. And he was very honest during his application process. And he said, hey, look, I don't have the network in Canada. I don't know the region right now. But here's what I've done in my home country. And here's why I think that, I'm made to be a founder. And here's how hard, I want to work and that. And we were, we got enough confidence, conviction in that person. We said, yeah, please join the program. And so I know in that particular case, like not only has I think he learned a lot about himself and a lot about, the ideas that he might want to be exploring, but frankly, I think he's actually found quite a lot of friends and kind of like a familial unit with some of the people from our cohort. He ended up, pairing with someone who I know kind of brought him to his first Canadian Thanksgiving dinner and is taking him outside of Toronto for the first time to see kind of like, the lakes of the north. And those are very human moments, which are nice and are the types of relationships that we don't intentionally create, but we do think can emerge when you get a good group of people together that work on something that isn't as intense as trying to build a company.
And for those interested in the start a visa program or are newcomers and want more information, tomorrow I'm interviewing one of the founders of Porch, and their mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs, newcomer entrepreneurs succeed. So join us tomorrow for that, because that'll be a great discussion. You can ask all those questions. What advice would you give to first-time founders looking to raise capital?
First-time founders looking to raise capital. Well, I think the answer in today's environment is different than what might have been, say, 2 years ago. Frankly, it is tougher. And we hear that from our colleagues that are at pre-seed investors and seed investors. It does feel, at this point, again, looking at the time, date of this recording right now, people, whether they say it publicly or not, I think are slowing down the pace at which they're making investments. They're waiting for more. They know that, at one point in time, there was more kind of leverage on the founder side. If you were onto something like, hot, kind of, proverbial hot, that's now shifted over more towards the buy side or the investor side, where they have the ability to, it's not as competitive as it may have been in the past. So what I would say for first-time founders, I don't know if it's different in this environment or just kind of like some basic fundamental tenets, is get very clear on what it is that you are trying to build. What is the why for why you're building it? Why, if it did work, could it be an outsized opportunity? And I'll kind of caveat this, that I'm really speaking much more from if you're approaching VC investors. Also, first-time investor should probably understand, if they're going after venture capital dollars, how do VCs think and how does their business model work? Because it's quite a unique asset class or investment strategy, where, right, a VC fund will make investments in a number of companies that can range, in some funds that have a strategy might be as low as 10 companies in a portfolio, up to other funds that could be like 100 companies in their portfolio. And what is their strategy to drive returns from their kind of portfolio construction? In our particular case, right, Antler Canada, we look to invest and back 80 to 100 of these founding teams in a 4 to 5 year period. And so we're on the one side of the spectrum where it's many, many, many small investments, and then we do look to do follow-on investments for those that reach the other stages. But our investment strategy kind of follows what they call the power law, which is we know that many of these companies are likely going to run to zero and not return any capital. Therefore, the ones that do succeed have to have the opportunity to succeed in such a large amount that it actually pays back for all the ones that went to zero, including generating an additional return on the dollars. And so for those that haven't read up on the power law, which is very interesting, not just in venture capital but in general, it's worth kind of to do a little Google searching on that, and to look that up, because I think it'll help you understand kind of how many VCs look at the world when it comes to making their bets. And so to bring it back, I think I kind of went on a tangent there. Understanding that will help someone that is thinking about raising money maybe set their expectations and or think about the size of their opportunity to determine, like, is my company really something that VCs may be excited about or not? Or if anything, they'll understand better if people are saying no, why they may be saying no.
What qualities do you look for in a founder when considering an investment?
So for us, we have a unique model compared to traditional venture in the way that we spend our time with founders. Because again, right, our model is we interview up front to try to find the 50 some odd most talented people to be in the room, but then we spend that 10 weeks with them, which is something literally that could translate up to 400 hours per person times the number of people on our team that are spending that. So there's a lot of observational data that we get on people during that period. And to bring it back to your question, then what are the things that we are looking for? Well, raw smarts for sure. Do they have that mindset that makes us believe that they're fully committed, to be on this journey? We do look for and are biased towards people that are biased towards execution. So, at Antler, we do lean heavier towards backing founders that during the 10 weeks have just spent their time getting out there, building, experimenting, learning, not sitting behind a screen and reading research reports, and pulling out every stat that's out there, but they've never really gone to market. And so, it's something that we tend to look for just as a meaningful trait. But we also look for, how do people come together, not founder, but founders as a team? What is the team chemistry really like? Have they kind of pressure tested their relationship? Do we get a sense that they're actually aligned on values and on some of these softer things, like what's their motivation for building a company? What's their envisioned timeline for how long they want to be doing that, right? Some people can easily say, look, I'm trying to do it. I want to make a quick buck and I want to get in and out in 2 or 3 years. Well, that doesn't work well if your co-founder is like, this is my passion in life. This is what I'm trying to solve for. And I'm going to do this for the next decade or so. And so, we'll try to get those honest conversations out of the way. In fact, that's, at the beginning stages of the Antler program, much of our content is actually focused on that chemistry, is focused on the founder relationship and trying to set the foundations of like aligned values in that early on, as opposed to focusing right on skills and complementary skills.
Where can people go to find out more about you and Antler online?
Well, antler.co, our website, that's antler.co, not .com, is probably a great starting point. We do have a presence on Twitter where we do provide sometimes real-time kind of insight into what's happening in our program, speakers that we're having going on. Sometimes it can be a little bit funny, so take a look at Antler Canada, the Twitter handle. Those are probably, good starting points for learning about Antler. But, if you Google Antler, startups or Antler founders, you'll see a lot of information about ourselves, about our organization. And that's, again, Antler globally, not just Antler Canada itself.
Fabulous. I really appreciate you taking the time, Bernie, out of your busy day to be a part of Startup Talk.
Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for the conversation. And again, for those that joined us on our call, thanks for taking the time and listening. Until next time, Craig.
Thanks. That was great. Thank you, everyone.